Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're exploring the incredibly complex ladder of law, basically tracing how absolute authority cascades. We'll start at the absolute top, with those sweeping global treaties, and follow the funnel all the way down to the local city charters, specifically looking at Municipal Home Rule Article 18, Sections 2 and 3, that dictate what happens on your actual street. But we're not stopping there. Halfway through, we're going to completely flip the script and uncover some absolutely fascinating alternative historical interpretations found in our source documents that challenge literally everything we just discussed. So it's a journey from the highest levels of global governance down to the esoteric symbols hiding right there in your wallet.
So we are starting our journey at the very top of the funnel. It's really easy to think of international law as something that only happens in far-off places like Geneva or at the UN, completely disconnected from our daily lives. But the core question we need to answer today is how these massive international obligations actually trickle down. Like, how does a single signature on a global convention legally bind a local city council?
To understand that trickle-down effect, we first need to define the absolute macro layer of our legal ladder. According to Black's Law Dictionary, public international law is the system of rules binding nations together. But this level creates something super unique: erga omnes obligations. As noted in foundational legal cases, these aren't just your standard, polite agreements between two countries. No, these are sweeping, heavy obligations owed to the international community as a whole. We're talking fundamental rights and massive collective interests that no nation can just ignore.
So what does this all mean for you? Well, international texts like the Vienna Convention explicitly state that, unless otherwise established, a treaty is binding upon a party in respect of its entire territory. Think about the gravity of that for a second. When a national government commits to a human rights treaty or a massive environmental convention, they are making a promise that dictates local reality. The nation is completely bound to take measures to ensure its constituent units, its states, its provinces, and yes, its cities, actually fulfill these global standards.
Now, funneling rapidly down the ladder, we hit the micro layer. Black's Law Dictionary defines municipal law in direct contradistinction to international law. This is the specific rulebook by which a particular district, community, or city is actually governed. So while international law looks outward at the globe, municipal law looks inward, directly at you, the citizen. It's exactly where the rubber meets the road.
But here is where we hit a massive core tension in local law. How much power does a city actually have to govern itself, especially when you have those global treaties pushing down from above? Historically, something called Dillon's Rule dominated. Under this doctrine, municipalities are basically just mere agents of the state. They have zero inherent powers. But on the other side of the coin, we have municipal home rule. This is a revolutionary concept where cities are actually granted independent, inherent powers of local self-government. It's a real battle for local sovereignty. A perfect concrete example of home rule in action is found right in the Ohio Constitution, specifically Article 18. If you look at Sections 2 and 3, they grant municipalities the authority to exercise all powers of local self-government. This was a massive shift, officially allowing cities to break free from total state control. But, and there's always a but, there is a catch. These local regulations cannot conflict with general laws. Section 7 gives municipalities the incredible power to frame their own municipal charter, which is basically a local constitution. But it sets up a wild legal showdown. If the city uses Section 3 to pass a local law, does an international treaty, which acts as a general law of the land, override it?
This chart brilliantly illustrates how courts actually resolve these inevitable clashes. If a city has formally adopted a charter, that charter acts as a literal shield, prevailing over state law regarding how the government is structured. Those are its procedural powers. Now, for a non-charter city, state law wins on procedures. However, notice that right column. For both types, when it comes to substantive local powers, purely local concerns, the municipality generally prevails. The charter is essentially the ultimate shield protecting a city's right to govern itself against outside interference.
All right, now that we've mapped out the standard legal ladder, let's just completely flip the script. Our sources for this explainer don't just cover standard constitutional law. They present some deeply fascinating, wildly unconventional interpretations regarding the true origins of our constitutions, our treaties, and the very concept of sovereignty itself. We're going to examine these alternative histories neutrally, purely through the lens of the provided Moorish Science Temple documents.
According to these specific texts, the foundational legal frameworks of the United States aren't exactly what we were taught in civics class. They assert that they are actually derived from ancient Moorish law. And the coolest part? The documents claim that the evidence for this isn't locked away in some secret national vault. It's hiding in plain sight, in your pocket, right on the back of our currency. In this view, the US dollar bill isn't just money. It's a deeply symbolic, legal, and historical document. These source documents outline a vastly different historical timeline. For instance, they argue that the United States operates legally as a society rather than a nation. They highlight figures like Big el-bey, who is described in the texts as a Moorish master astrologer and mathematician who supposedly helped lay the true foundations of the federal government back in 1795. So instead of your standard Western political history, these texts interpret national symbols, like the Great Seal, through the lens of ancient sciences, esoteric astrology, and sacred geometry.
And looking closely at the seals provided in the source images, the texts explain this really profound duality. If you fold a dollar bill, you essentially get two distinct sides of government. The pyramid is described as the Moorish nation symbol for the Great Seal law, representing foundational truth and the roots of civilization in places like Egypt. On the flip side, the bald eagle represents what the texts call the Christian unionized states, acting as the main design of the current system. It's an interpretation of two completely distinct heritages tightly bound together in one single seal.
The absolute crucial key to unlocking this esoteric view is the number 13. I mean, you see it everywhere on the seal. 13 stars, 13 leaves, 13 arrows. There are even 13 letters in E pluribus unum. While standard history links this to the 13 original colonies, these source documents argue for a much deeper occult meaning. Here, 13 represents regeneration, transformation, and harmony with nature, specifically symbolizing the 12 magnetic influences of the zodiac completely surrounding the central unifying power of the sun.
We'll conclude this explainer with a highly provocative claim taken directly from these alternative texts. The documents explicitly state that because the true Constitution is derived from ancient Moorish law, certain subsequent treaties and colorable legal processes are actually null and void. It really brings us full circle, doesn't it? Whether you're relying on the strict text of an Article 18 municipal home rule charter to shield your city from state law, looking at how sweeping global conventions bind a nation's territory, or exploring esoteric documents that challenge the very validity of those federal treaties, we are left to wonder, who truly holds the ultimate authority? Think about that delicate thread of law the next time you vote on a local city code or, just pull a dollar bill out of your pocket.